Hello, everybody. My name is Nathan Marke, and I'm the Chief Strategy Officer of Giacom. And welcome to episode 4 in our webinar series, How Can MSPs Monetize the Opportunity of Generative AI? Now, if you've seen our first 3 episodes, I've had some fantastic interviews with leaders from 3 Microsoft-centric MSPs who, in very different ways, actually, have focused on the opportunity with generative AI and are very successfully differentiating their businesses and demonstrably, can't say that word, growing their top and bottom lines through focusing in specifically on the Microsoft Copilot opportunity. And very interestingly, in the last episode 3, Lewis Lydiard from TechCare detailed some of the ways in which his business has been building out agents to help his MSP run more efficiently, and also some really exciting stuff he's doing. So his business has a focus on the construction vertical, and he's built out some really differentiated go-to-market plays using Copilot Studio and using some of the toolkit in Azure to do some really interesting things in that space. So for today's episode, I thought it would be really good to bring in Microsoft directly to ask Microsoft its view on the world of MSP adoption, in particular around the agentic revolution. I can think of no one better than someone that works really closely with Giacom and Giacom's partners, Guy Gregory. So, Guy, huge welcome. Could you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do at Microsoft?
Hi, Nathan. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Guy Gregory. I am a partner solution architect at Microsoft. Really, I'm here to help partners to grow their AI practices, to help build AI solutions, and to also upskill themselves on AI. I've been at Microsoft for just over 8 years now, and before I joined Microsoft, I myself was working for an MSP. In fact, several MSPs over 15 years, and so I understand, some of the challenges that MSPs face, and also some of the great work that they're doing with our customers. So yeah, that's my background.
Brilliant. Guy is being very modest there. So the thing that I'm really excited about talking to Guy is Guy's got the battle scars of being an MSP, but also he won't tell you this, but actually he is a real tinkerer around the area of agentic and has built some really brilliant agents to kind of try to bring to life the opportunity for MSPs partners in this space. So really excited to talk to you. So first question for you then. So hate to go back to sort of Microsoft research, but there was a brilliant report that Microsoft put out recently called the Work Trend Index report for 2025. I know it's something Microsoft's been doing for a long time, but what I was very interested in that is it highlighted the really significant capacity gap between business demands and human capacity. And I think the stat was that 68% of employees are struggling with work pace and volume. Now, agents seem to be a purposeful solution to this problem, but active use of agents in SMBs is very much in its infancy. So looking ahead over the next 6 to 12 months, how do you see the role of AI agents evolving in SMB focused MSPs? And what should partners be preparing for now to stay relevant and to stay competitive?
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, you touched on the Work Trend Index report that we put out a few months ago. That really introduced the concept of what we call a frontier firm. So an organization that's really embracing AI and allowing the organization to grow rapidly, because it's really leaning into AI solutions, and it specifically agents. And when we think of a frontier firm, there are essentially 3 phases that organizations are currently in. And so the first phase is humans with assistance. And I think a lot of organizations are currently using applications, Copilot, to assist them with their day-to-day work in a general term. Then we also have the next phase, which is where we have this kind of human agent team, so a human collaborating with an AI assistant, offloading a lot of the tasks that they might have. And we're already starting to see examples of this both in our partners, our customers, but also examples within Microsoft where we have folks that are building AI assistants to take away some of the tedium out of their job. And then the final phase, which I think a lot of businesses are aspiring to. I don't think many firms have quite got there yet, where we have this kind of human-led, agent-operated phase where the AI is able to self-improve, to optimize, and to essentially run the function more effectively than the human itself. When I think about the opportunity there, a lot of that is offloading some of the day-to-day drudgery of work. And when I think about the individuals involved, the kind of human aspect of that, I think there's actually great opportunity for the individuals who are going through this transition, because you essentially become the boss of a team of AIs, and you become you empower yourself to really become more productive, more efficient, and to get more done. For me, that's great, because I feel like there are parts of my job which I don't enjoy doing, things that are a bit more repetitive, and so being able to outsource some of that work to an agent just frees up more time for me to be able to do things that I enjoy, like speaking to our partners, for example.
I mean, in extremis, Guy, I remember Sam Altman on the launch of GPT-5 saying that he didn't think it was going to be long before a one-person business becomes a unicorn, becomes $1 billion business. That's extraordinary, isn't it? So one person sat in the middle of a swarm of agents delivering a business. I mean, so maybe that's quite a long way off, and obviously Mr. Altman will have a very good reason for wanting to promote those services. But it kind of does highlight, if that's in extremis, what is the opportunity? I've also seen, certainly the research I've seen from Gartner, suggesting that 80% of large enterprise businesses have significant AI projects on this year. But there was some research from MIT last week that was saying that 95% of those projects are failing to deliver their ROI. There's obviously loads of experimentation going on about how we deploy this, but then you've got little SMBs who kind of aren't really featuring this at all in it at all. That's the opportunity, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you've mentioned before that MSPs are able to be a lot more agile and adapt really quickly to some of the new changes in AI. And the AI space is changing so rapidly that it's important to keep up to date with the latest technology. We've seen agents really improve over the last few years. Part of that is because of in better models, smarter models. We've just released GPT-5 on the Azure AI Foundry and within Copilot. Better tooling, so the ability for those LLMs to use tools and reach out to other APIs, for example. We've just launched into public preview the Microsoft Agent Framework, which really makes that integration a lot easier. And then finally, we're also seeing that these models, these newer reasoning models, are able to do greater what's called test time compute. So essentially spending a bit more time on the inference phase of AI, whereas perhaps in the past it would have only been seconds or minutes where the AI could really think for, to use a metaphor. Now we're seeing these reasoning models that can run for hours, sometimes even up to a day, and it's only probably a matter of time before we see AI agents that can run for days, weeks, or months, or even continually in the background, essentially taking a large portion of a function or responsibility from somebody who. Again, if that can be automated, it frees up that person to do more valuable things within the business.
Yeah, I mean the pace of change for me is just extraordinary. If you pause for a minute, then suddenly there's more, more functionality, more capability, more value. I think someone said to me recently that over the last 12 months there have been 300 updates to Copilot. So if you train somebody on Copilot last year and they looked at it now, it's a transformational experience. But it does seem to me like this is a great opportunity for MSPs to evolve their managed services businesses, right? Because right now they're delivering classical managed services around keeping infrastructure up and working. But moving into that space about how do I keep my customer current with this incredible innovation seems like such a good opportunity.
Absolutely. I think when it comes to times of great change, there's always partner opportunity. A lot of customers need real help at embracing and adopting some of these technologies. They perhaps don't have, you know, specialists in house who can advise them on how best to implement AI safely and securely, and they rely on our reseller partners to ensure that they are getting the most from their AI investments. A great time. I think back to the change that we saw around cloud and the opportunities that those provided for our partners, and many partners were really successful in helping their customers to embrace the cloud and are now realizing the benefits. And I think we're going to see the same thing with AI.
Yeah, it's, I mean, such an exciting opportunity for me, for that evolution of the managed service and to stay relevant and deliver real fresh value into SMBs. I think it's amazing. So on that note, actually, just moving on to a kind of slightly different tack, I think what our MSPs are really hungry for is real examples of where end customers or the MSPs themselves are innovating using agents. So when I spoke with Lewis Lydiard at Microsoft-centric MSP Tech Care in the last episode, Lewis gave me several brilliant examples about how his business is using agents to streamline the operational processes within his business. So from what you've seen with that kind of broader view, how are AI agents being used to automate those routine MSP tasks? I mean, you must know the MSP world very well around scripting, triage, documentation. What sort of impact are you seeing on service delivery and profitability?
Yeah, I think, if I think back to my days working for MSP companies, I know that, number one, the resources within the MSP are always limited. You only have so many hours in the day, you only have so many people, and there is always more work to do, right? So there's no shortage of customers who are looking for help to roll things out, to update things, to fix things, to ask you questions about how the new shiny thing works. And there are so many areas where MSPs can adopt AI to make their own processes more efficient. Everything from perhaps the classic example of a support chatbot. I think that's probably the most traditional kind of, if you think
That's the
about
obvious
AI
one,
within,
isn't it?
that's the obvious one, right? But then there are so many other things like triaging tickets, summarization of tickets, automated escalation of important tickets, being able to incorporate AI into scripts. So, when I was working for MSPs back in the day, I could run a script and pull a log from a backup, but sometimes it would be difficult to then say for sure, hey, is this backup actually run successfully? If you have AI that can look at the log and then parse that without you having to kind of write code to extract the specific bit, it can give you a really good judgment about, hey, did this work? If not, why didn't it work? What are the next actions that we need to do to actually remediate this? There's also things like documentation. That can take up so much of a text time within an MSP. Yet it's incredibly important to make sure that documentation is up to date. Being able to automate and standardize documentation and just make people more productive in writing that documentation. I really wish I had that back when I was an MSP. And if you think about from a leadership perspective, if you're sitting down with one of your clients and you're looking to do a QBR meeting, or even you're just preparing for a meeting with with your customer, the Copilot and AI assistants can help you prepare to summarize meetings, and to really get the most out of that time that you're spending with your customer.
Yeah. I mean, it was fascinating talking with Lewis at Tech Care, where he has built studio agents to cover all of the different standard operating procedures in their business. So a very inexperienced first line person on a help desk without the help of tier 3 has a serious problem comes in from an end customer around backup or security or whatever it is, and can go into Teams, can engage with an agent that is specifically built to follow the operating procedure for that particular problem, and a very inexperienced person can do the right thing and collect the right information and get things sorted ahead of passing to tier 3 or whatever. I thought that was really interesting way that you could shift left, I guess, and create a lot more value at the front end of the business for the partner.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the breadth of knowledge that these LLMs can provide, it really does help, especially more junior techs in their day-to-day job. In many cases in MSP, you come across really obscure problems that that a junior tech may not have ever seen before. And
Yeah.
rather than having to ask somebody more senior, they might be able to find the answer themselves by using these AI tools. And again, thinking about how these MSPs are using these tools, I kind of see three different categories of use at the moment. The first category is, like I mentioned earlier, using these general purpose AIs as assistants to be able to talk to. So, for example, your Microsoft Copilots, your Microsoft 365 Copilot, integrated into the tooling. So, in many cases, the reseller may not necessarily have the control over which AIs the tool provider is choosing. But, I was talking to one of your resellers yesterday. They run Halo PSA. And in that case, you can bring your own Azure OpenAI key, and that actually unlocks additional features that you don't get out of the box. So this is a great example of where you could, improve that experience by deploying the Azure OpenAI key. And of course, many of our partners have access to Azure credit that they can use for their own business as well. And then the final sort of third category, I see some more adventurous MSPs, essentially building their own solutions, building their own Copilots using Copilot Studio, building their own AI applications using Azure AI Foundry, and integrating AI into their scripts as well, so that they can do this kind of intelligent scripting that I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Microsoft has built out such a powerful toolkit, hasn't it, for enabling agents in all those different guises that you've described. I guess it leads very neatly on to the next question, really, again, changing tack slightly, which is about skill sets. So, I've heard from all of the MSPs that I've interviewed so far that they were successful because they treated themselves as their own customer zero. So they kind of, very early on aggressively adopted the technology to get ahead of customer demand. So, skills is obviously really critical here, isn't it? So what do you think are the most effective and practical steps that MSPs could take right now to stay ahead in this space, especially when you're serving SMBs with very limited technical capacity? You've got an SMB
Yeah.
that won't have a Scooby about tech. So
Yeah.
how do you, have you got any advice there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think when we talk about bending the innovation curve with AI, and how rapidly this is changing, we sometimes forget the the human aspect of accelerating that capability by adding the human element into it. And of course, the important factors within the human element are the skills, the ability to use these tools, and also the learning that you're doing around the tools as well. So I think combining the rapid capability acceleration within AI and combining that with the the ability to use these more smartly and to build your AI skills, that is in combination, that has a huge potential for your business. And when I think about the ways that I personally have learned to build my own agents and to solve problems for myself and for the business, I think about making sure that I have time to experiment, making sure that I have time to invest in my understanding of how to get the most out of these tools, and also using AI to upskill myself as well. So, I'm not doing this, as I perhaps would have 10 years ago, where I'm just simply reading a book, but I'm combining the learning resources that I have at my disposal with the AI tools to make sure that I'm actually accelerating my own learning. And I think, the advice that I would give to customers, to partners who are looking to go down the same route, think about one particular process within your business that you could improve. Focus on perhaps building out a prototype that with AI, and it could be just a simple solo project. It could be a group hackathon event that you run within your company. But I think by actually using these tools and building the solutions yourself, and using yourself as a customer zero, as you mentioned, I think it's a great way to learn how to use these tools and to get better.
Yeah, it's really interesting for me that the sort of process that you're describing there is you get really close to the business process and the workflow and you understand it, and then you spin up a prototype and then you play with it, see if it works. If it fails, you get rid of it, or you kind of improve it. Like it's a very kind of DevOps, very agile kind of approach, and it looks very akin to me to the skills that you would have in a business that's doing software development work, for example, or that's doing consulting type work. Do you think that that is true? I mean, another thing that we've definitely started to see is some of the larger, well-funded infrastructure MSPs are looking to acquire consulting skills or dynamic skills or data skills and bringing those into the business so that they have a kind of that human workflow ability to have those skills deliver that value. Do you think that's a do you think that's a barrier to your sort of standard infrastructure MSP, or do you think that actually everybody's capable of doing this? That low code, no code gets so simple that we really could do this ourselves in the way that you've described yourself learning.
Yeah, it's really interesting because as these tools get easier to use, the bar for adoption is lowering, and more people are starting to be able to use them. So if I think about, a few years ago with, some of the tools that came out initially, it would, you could still technically, do things like build a website, but actually you would still need quite a lot of coding experience and knowledge on how to implement it. Whereas now we have things like GitHub Spark, to be able to, essentially create an app or web app with even really no understanding of some of the concepts to build a website, to use code. And I think as time goes on, that bar will continue to lower and lower, so more people will be able to access the tools. But when I think about some of the skills that are really important, actually one thing that we found from our research was that, interestingly, managers are able to adopt these new AI tools more effectively because essentially you are delegating tasks to another either person or another AI, and so they understand that whole concept of being able to describe a task that they want to do, to then send that to somebody else or to an AI, and for that AI or that person to come back to them. So managers have that capability to delegate. I think delegation is an important skill, but when I think about like some of the other traits that are really useful, I think judgment, empathy, creativity is also important as well, and I think there is still some strategic thinking, human traits which LLMs haven't quite managed to get to yet. Even with the more advanced reasoning models, I think there are some elements where it's still more important to get that human insights as well. But of course,
yeah, yeah. Sorry, go on.
Well, yeah, as AI offloads more and more of the repetitive work and some of the non-valuable judge work that people have within their job, that then frees them up to be able to focus on some of those areas where they can unlock that creativity, that innovation that they have.
It's interesting when you talk about the manager. I'm reflecting back on some of the conversations I've had with other partners where they're saying something very similar, but what they're saying is that they're taking, terrible term, but a bright young thing, someone who's really got to grips with how to build an agent in Studio or Spark or whatever, and then they're sending them into the SMB customer to sit alongside the manager. It's exactly right. So the manager then brings in the knowledge about the overall process, understands the jobs that need to be done and the tasks that need to be done, and then they work on how do they build out agents. It's like building out new members of the team for that manager. That has been the way that's been deployed by MSPs. Very interesting.
Absolutely, and I think we will increasingly see teams being augmented by AI co-workers. I mean, I already feel like I have, essentially a coding assistant that I can delegate tasks to using GitHub Copilot. And, again, increasingly, I think we will have lots of categories of co-pilots where people will just delegate that work to their AI assistant, and the AI assistant will come back and ask for you to mock its work and check that everything's okay. And if everything looks great, then you just maybe tweak it a little bit and integrate it into your work, rather than you having to focus. And one thing that I think we do forget about a lot is actually not just the productivity benefits that the company gains, but it's also like the human elements as well, because I feel much more fulfilled in my job when I'm not having to do repetitive work. I feel like it's a lot easier for me to manage my tasks and to get work done when I have the AI assistants to be able to do a lot of my job. And for me, I want to log off at 5:30 and spend time with my family. I don't want to be working long hours all night, where perhaps in the past I would have had to spend hours and hours debugging some code. Nowadays I can essentially just offload that to Copilot and then spend more time with my daughters. So it really, when you think about the value that AI can bring to your business, don't forget the human aspects and the human benefits that come along with things like Copilot and AI assistants.
Oh, that's a really lovely way to end the interview. I think about talking to so many MSPs who are feeling under a great deal of stress at the moment because it is really busy. The solutions they're delivering to their customers are getting increasingly complex. Customers are getting increasingly demanding. Cyber threats are getting much worse, not better. And they're right in the middle of all that stuff. And having the ability to bring this sort of tooling in to really help them to deliver better services to their customers, and also to get that balance right between work and life, I think is a really great way to think about that. Listen, Guy, it's been an absolute privilege to have you chatting with us today. Thank you for bringing all your knowledge in. Just a quick sort of trailer for episode 5. So in the next episode, I'm going to be turning my focus to things that are on everybody's lips: business continuity and security. I'm going to be talking with a very senior leader at Acronis about their view of the MSP opportunity in cyber, which should be really exciting. So until then, a huge thank you, Guy, to you, and I'll see you next time. Thank you very much, Guy.
Thank you for having me.